there's been one prospect that's really caught the sports world by storm, and that's Victor Wembanyama. So I want to ask you, Matt, just for those who never heard this guy before like 2 weeks ago, can you kind of give us a primer, a synopsis as to why Victor is so special and why a lot of people are saying this guy is a can't miss prospect for next year's draft?
Yeah, Victor is incredible. I was in Vegas last week for those two games against the G League Ignite, and I've been around basketball my whole life, and I think probably the most incredible prospect I've ever seen. Not necessarily the best. I mean, I played against LeBron when he was in high school, but this guy's 7'4", an 8-foot wingspan, shoots pull-up threes, fadeaways. He's very coordinated and skilled. I mean, brings up the ball in transition and just blocks and dunks everything. I think if he has a little bit of strength, I mean, he could be an all-time great. He's that kind of upside.
So I guess my concerns when I have my own casual basketball opinion when seeing like big men that are highly touted, the first thing that comes to mind is that they're injury prone. So I want to ask you from just a standpoint, like you said, for him getting stronger, are there any concerns in terms of his health, just in terms of like the first couple of years kind of adjusting to the NBA style of play? Is that any kind of a concern, or do you think he'll adapt pretty quickly?
Yeah, no, it's definitely a concern on some level or another. I mean, similar to what we talked about last year with Chet Holmgren, I mean, guys with, and I've said this before with my staff, is guys with unique body types oftentimes have unique problems. I mean, whether that's Zion Williamson or Chet Holmgren. So it's definitely something that we're keeping a pulse on. Obviously, I'm not a trainer. I'm not a doctor. So, I mean, I think, his medicals in the pre-draft is going to be interesting. I mean, I'm sure teams are going to be very careful with a guy with such a unique body type. And, from a scouting perspective, he is very thin. I mean, like I said, he's one of the most unique, incredible prospects I've ever seen, if not the most. But he does get knocked off his spot pretty easily. I mean, he's very thin, as opposed to the Chet Holmgren, which they actually are very similar. I would say Victor is more of a rich man's Chet, but very very similar. Unique, long body type, skilled. But Victor, in addition of being bigger, he does have a better body. I mean, he's already got some definition. Looks like he's got a frame to add muscle. And I think it's funny. His agent Buna Injai, who's a good friend of mine, and was my partner when I was an agent. He was sitting courtside with Rudy Gobert. And I remember watching Rudy at the Euro camp in Treviso, Italy, and he was extremely thin too. And Rudy, I mean, he has not had a problem physically at all. I mean, he added a ton of weight. And so I actually would compare from a physical standpoint, Victor to Rudy more so than Chet, even though his game is much more like Chet's.
You brought up LeBron James earlier, so I have to go back to this because every year, I mean, we're always prone to hyperbole and we get excited for these prospects. Is Wembanyama, is he the greatest prospect that we've ever seen? Is it since LeBron James? In your professional opinion, where does he kind of rank at the moment? Of course.
Yeah, I mean, he's got to be in that grouping of the unique top talents. I mean, it's to compare him to LeBron, I think it's really hard. For one, I mean, very different styles of play. I mean, other guys. I mean, Tim Duncan was a little bit before my time, but I remember my dad scouting him, talking about him. Hey, this guy's a surefire guy. I mean, Zion Williamson a couple years ago. I mean, what was a really top prospect. I would put him in that group, if not close to the top.
And from what you've seen so far, what are the reports from him, off the court and in practices in terms of some of the other intangibles like work ethic, things along those lines? I mean, obviously we saw his range. He went, what was it, like 7 for 10 from 3-point range. So there's been some work, there's clear skill there. But in terms of his work ethic, what are you hearing?
Yeah, so as I mentioned, his agent Buna Injai was my partner when I was an agent, and so I know their whole staff, and I've talked to a number of their guys about Victor for years, essentially. And then the coach, Vincent Colletti, he's the national team coach and Victor's coach on his team now. His son works for Buna, and everybody raves about Victor's work ethic. I mean, he's got, even though he looks like he would be a soft guy because he's not physically tough. Is a pretty competitive kid. Again, sort of similar to Chet in that regard. And they all say he's very mature. So, I mean, all indicators right now are that it's 2 thumbs up all the way around.
I want to ask you, Matt, you brought up Zion, and I think, definitely his circumstances were different because, through his development, there was a pandemic. But I just want to ask you, in terms of such a highly touted prospect like Victor, what advice would you give him in terms of kind of avoiding the pitfalls that maybe his peers have experienced? Because he's so highly touted, we're kind of in a new phase in terms of just this ongoing hype machine on social media. And then once he gets picked, and then Summer League, and then when he makes his debut, like what is the roadmap would you give him to make sure that he's hitting all the benchmarks and he doesn't encounter any like unfortunate setbacks?
Yeah, sure. I mean, I think that type of advice, would vary from player to player. I think with Victor specifically, in looking at Zion's situation, is control what you can, which is your body. And so, I mean, I think Zion's big issue is he gained so much weight, and he had the injury problems. I mean, with Victor, obviously, totally different body type than Zion, but extreme. So he needs to get stronger. He needs to do the little stuff to make sure that his body's right.
So I just want to ask you, just in general, when you're evaluating a prospect, what exactly are you looking for in their game? Are you looking for just because I realize now that just the way that the sport of basketball has gone internationally in America, just in terms of this player development, I think that the skill set has probably been raised compared to years past, just through evolution of the game. So, what exactly are you looking for that makes a great NBA prospect specifically compared to somebody that might have just a game better fit for international play or some other form of basketball, but that's not necessarily professional?
Yeah, I mean, it depends on the prospect where they're at in their career. I mean, obviously, there's so many different paths now for guys. I mean, it's we got the G League Ignite, we got Overtime Elite, guys going to Australia, obviously, guys going to college. And another thing is, you know, there's so many different roles that can be filled in the NBA. It's not just like there's one set of skills that we're looking for, that makes an NBA player. Essentially, we want a lay of the land, have all the variables in the equation to figure out who a guy is and how he potentially fits and coexists with other players and contributes to winning. And so I know that's a vague answer. It's sort of a hard question because there's so many different circumstances that would make or break a prospect in regards to how do they translate.
Let's talk a little basketball. I don't know if we can turn this hopeful or not, Justin, but is there any hope for the Nets from what you're seeing on the court? I know you watch like Nets Mavericks and some things. I mean, can the Nets make a playoff push? Can they pick up the pieces here?
They have good players. Like I think I've been impressed with Yuta Watanabe and Royce O'Neal.
Mhm.
They played Chicago. That was the big game in terms of, I think that was the game that the afternoon prior to that Steve Nash got fired. So
Hmm.
they look good on the court. I mean, Kevin Durant's still Kevin Durant. He scored a quick 20 points in the first half in that game. They're not terrible. I think they're bad defensively and they're weak inside. I I just think in terms of mentality of this team, in terms of there's so many distractions, so many, I think, missed pieces on here that I don't see them improving. And I think one thing to highlight is Ben Simmons. It sucks. I actually feel sorry for him. I know in the past we've both been we were hammering him more. I think myself than you, but I just think at this point it might just be the best thing to just start from scratch all over again with this team. And it's a wrap. And I do genuinely feel with Ben Simmons' skill set, he can be of use, but not as this guy who we were talking about should he shoot the ball or not. I think he's trying to get acclimated, trying to get his feet under him from this, his mental health and his injuries. He just needs to get back, into the rhythm of things. He's hurt now. So I just think a new place where he doesn't have to be the focus. Something similar to with DeMar in San Antonio. I realize he struggled there, but I just think where DeMar didn't have the attention on him, I think it would be great for Ben Simmons. Maybe we can see that where, DeMar kind of so much struggle in San Antonio, but now he's flourishing in Chicago. He's awesome. So maybe that could be the same thing for Ben. But I just think currently with this team, it might just be the best to cut bait and just get picks.
So, um, Yeah, and they're going to need to, because delightfully, my Houston Rockets have their picks.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah,
so,
there you go.
so I'm all for this. So,
Yeah, yeah, right.
backstory, state
Right.
my bias here in terms of how I'm feeling about the Nets
Sure,
dumpster fire. But
sure.
in all seriousness, I do feel this season a little bit more. So we went kind of hard at Kevin Durant in the offseason for some things. Now that he's back on the court, and as we suspected, we've always respected him on the court and the effort that he puts in, and his talent, his abilities, his just overall legacy as a basketball player on the court performance. That's always been good. There's always been respect for him there, no doubt. And I do pity him, because with the chaos that's going on, you wonder, it's been a long story. I mean, since Ben Simmons ended his tenure in Philadelphia and sat out that long period of time, it's been questioned, is his motivation on basketball? Does he even want to play? I mean, that's a legitimate question that people are asking. Same thing for Kyrie now, with all the chaos that's gone on. And we know that Kevin Durant and Kyrie have this like crazy respect and bond for each other and appreciation for their games. But with everything going on off the court, it seems like there's not focus directed at the objective of winning a title for Kyrie and Ben Simmons the way that it is for KD. I think KD still wants that, even though he didn't get his trade
Oh,
requests and
hell
things
yeah,
like that.
for sure.
He's come
Yes.
into work.
Yeah, for
So
sure.
let me say that for KD.
Yes.
So it's frustrating to see that didn't happen, that the pieces have not fallen in place. Kyrie doesn't have to worry about the vaccine stuff at this point, so there's no external, world pressure type of thing. And then he tweets this, and we're back at, the controversy that we opened this podcast on. But you can't tell me that you could have tweeted stuff out like this in the off season and things like that if that's really your objective. And I think Kyrie's answer, I can't speak for him, of course. We don't know what's going on with Kyrie, but I think he would say that there are bigger things than basketball to worry about, and these are the things that I'm tweeting about or whatever. Be probably some sort of answer like that based on other things that I've seen him answer. But then that gets back to my point, ending this circle, that you're not focused on that NBA title like Kevin Durant is. And so I'll say I feel for Kevin Durant there in that
Yeah,
sense.
me too. I somewhat do, but at the same time, he put himself in this situation. Durant did. I
Sure.
mean,
And
he
that
had
was
the
what we
perfect.
said in the off
I
season.
mean, he
Yeah,
had the perfect situation in Golden State. They'd
true.
be one of the greatest dynasties this league's ever seen if he stayed in Golden State.
He
Simply,
wanted to do it
you
on
went
his
out.
own, and this is
Yeah,
what happens.
yeah,
Yep.
that's true. You
It
made your
it
bed, you
just
lay in it.
You went somewhere
Yeah,
that seemed very stable at the time that he joined them,
yeah,
but man, now today the Knicks look more stable, a lot more stable than the Nets,
it's true.
relatively speaking. And who would have thought we would be saying that? Because
Well,
the Knicks
guys,
wanted KD.
no, it's true, and guys know the personalities of their peers that they work with,
True.
and it's hard pressed
Good
for me to
point.
Kevin Durant to be just shocked at
True.
Kyrie's personality here. Just like, oh, I'm astonished at all what is happening here,
True.
what is unfolded. So he knew what he was getting into, and he's paying the price. I mean,
True.
it sucks. It actually is weird because I was happy the Bulls got the win, and I think they're, as of the recording of this podcast, are on a 2-game winning streak. But it hurt me watching that because he was a maestro on that floor. He basically dominated Chicago for that first half. It's weird because I'm a fan of Chicago. I want the Nets to lose, but it was just phenomenal just to see him just
Oh yeah.
ball like that and just be so efficient. And it just sucked just to see really just the life just taken out of that arena. Like, it was very little just reaction, just in terms of the energy, just not there. It's brutal. It's just unfortunate just to see. So I really don't know what the next chapter, as I said in the offseason, I really don't know what Kevin Durant, I understand he wants to win, but in terms of how he gets those championships, I don't really know what his requirements are. So,
Yeah, we may look back and the narrative is KD wasted,
yeah,
3 years of tail end of his prime,
yeah,
or like peak starting to go down of his prime. I mean, he's still playing at a very high level. Can't deny that, certainly. One last thing, and I know we got to get out of here, but it has been rumored, to your point of blowing this up, it has been rumored that the Nets would like a veteran shooter from the Western Conference. This is from Ian Begley reporting this. So there have been discussions with teams in the Western Conference. The Nets would like a veteran shooter for Ben Simmons. So it seems like Ben Simmons is hurt, as you mentioned. It does seem like the Ben Simmons experiment is coming to an end in Brooklyn already. We haven't seen him many games, and who knows the likelihood of this deal getting done and them agreeing to terms on this. I assume they probably want picks as well if they're getting a veteran sort of shooter. And who knows? I mean, Ben Simmons' value right now is super low.
It is.
So I don't know that they'll get the return that they're looking for. Please tell me that they aren't getting Eric Gordon from the Rockets and then Ben Simmons will be a Houston Rocket. Please tell me, Justin. I think that's a likely candidate, actually, is what I'm saying.
That might be. I know you don't like that, but I think for Ben Simmons, it might be the best thing for him. Young energy, don't have to worry about winning. He can just improve. I mean, look what's happening with John, a little bit of situation with, John Wall's different, but I just feel like with, what I mean? It's just, there's not the expectations. I mean, he gets there.
Sure.
I mean, he's not going to be a world beater. There's no pressure of the Rockets, going to the playoffs. It's just, he can just naturally, get back, get right, and play with young players with some optimism. So it could be the best thing for him. I know you don't like that in terms of, the future of the team, but I think for this Ben Simmons, the person, it might be what he needs to turn the corner.
Yep. Tune into Hoopsology next week when I wear my Ben Simmons Houston Rockets jersey.
Right. Right.
Just kidding.
NBAstore.com. Yeah.
No. And look, on a serious note, I've said it before. I'll say it again. I want Ben Simmons to succeed. I want to see a guy averaging like 16, 10, and 10 and dominating on the defensive end.
Yeah.
That's what I think we all want. So if that happened in Houston, great. Of course, I'll be rooting for him. I'll be rooting for him wherever he goes, just because I don't want to see potential wasted, as I've talked about before.
Yeah. If you don't mind, did you have anything else on that point? Or
that's the last thing I had. So maybe the most chaotic week in Nets history is coming to close here, but
yes,
we got to see if Kyrie's suspension gets extended, depending on what goes down, like we said. So there may be more to follow up on, and we may have someone covering the Nets for more discussion on that,
for sure,
if we deem necessary.
Yeah, so stay tuned.
We'll see what happens.
So, Chris, you touched on the Jordan Challenge mode, and for this year's NBA 2K23, and this is something that is very similar to NBA 2K11. And I remember buying that game. I remember even going over Matt's house and playing it.
Nice.
That's right.
The memories that it was like going back in time, is like a time machine, basically.
Yes.
Just remembering NBA 2K11. My question to you, it's just when that mode came out back then compared to the mode coming out now, what is the type of feedback that you're seeing in terms of kind of the younger fans? Because, you mentioned that we're all in our mid-30s. We all, remember the magic of Jordan. Like, I think it's safely to say we're all members of the Church of Jordan at this point, car carrier members, and just remember all those moments. But for kind of the younger fans, they don't have that kind of connection to Jordan, and this game I think can bring him closer to that. What kind of feedback are you seeing? Are you seeing kind of younger fans change their minds in regards to like who their favorite player is just through playing this mode, or kind of what are you seeing in terms of kind of transforming basketball culture from kind of a younger demographic, so to speak?
I think it's just a great way to relive history in such a visceral way. I don't think there's a lot of platforms that could do that. Sure, you have documentaries, but like reliving his career, and I'm blown away with what the team did. I'm known for a long time, since day one, that we were doing the Jordan challenges, and I was like on cloud nine when I heard it, because I remember 2K11 so vividly for two reasons. My dad sat down to watch the Jordan challenges, and he never cared to watch video games, and he sat down and he was like so intrigued by seeing like the 80s Lakers and oh wow, they have that team, and they have the Boston Celtics, and they have the Bulls and the Bad Boys of Detroit. And so walking down memory lane for a basketball fan is like a really special thing. I think just traditionally our culture is so nostalgic. And then when it comes to like great sports, I think a lot of people fell in love with basketball because of Michael Jordan. So to be able to hand that to a younger generation of fans, you know, they'll learn a little something or two about, you know, the greatest of all time when it comes to MJ. And, you know, for me personally, just watching feedback, it's been fun to watch people relive these moments. And also for just generally with NBA 2K, as our franchise has done time and time again. A couple years ago, Mark Cuban said it best, like NBA 2K is kind of a way to educate younger fans about the history of the basketball and the history of basketball. And I think when you look at that with everything we do with obtaining as many players as we can have from the past and celebrating those players and making them play like themselves and giving them animations so they play like those players. It's such a cool thing to go down like this virtual basketball museum in various modes. And then the MJ challenges. I mean, one of my favorite things is the testimonials that we have from different people: Dennis Rodman, Jeannie Buss, Shaquille O'Neal, Ron Harper. Hearing these stories of people that played with or against Jordan, and hearing these like intros to each game, those testimonials. There's about a 30 to 45 second video that'll play that'll kind of give you the background of, you know, somebody talking about that particular moment that you're about to do. And it's so cool. Like, just you get that insight, you go to the game, you know, the team, the audio in the mode. I don't know if you guys have sat down and jumped in, but the audio team went in and brought old broadcasters back. The presentation looks just like the presentation of the early 80s and the late 80s and the 90s. Everything, like, there was no stone unturned when it came to details. And that's something I think that is really a testament to our development team. You know, when they jump into projects, I think they don't try to cut corners with anything, especially with something like MJ. Like, you're kind of handling the holy grail, you know what I mean? Like, no one can fumble this thing and break it, you know? So it's been really cool to see people talking about the Jordan mode and enjoying it. And I mean, I don't even know how to put it, man. Shit, it's the coolest thing to me personally as a fan of basketball in 2K. Like, I love the Jordan mode. It's just incredible. So I think for younger fans, this is going to be a way to be like, all right, Jordan was able to play the game and have these great moments that are so iconic, and there's a reason for it. Everybody knows it, you know?